Well, welcome to this week's midweek video, and we're going to kind of piggyback on what we've been talking about the last couple of weeks with why is there evil. Last week we looked at it from the perspective of we kind of assume that God owes us something in order to have eliminated all evil. And we're going to kind of piggyback on that and look at it from a little bit different perspective. So we're still kind of looking at the same question of why does God allow evil into this world? And with that, God actually gives us the answer in Matthew chapter 13, where we look at the parable of the wheat and tares, where wheat is illustrative of the believer who's going to choose Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior and follow God's standards. And the tares are the wicked, those that are going to come and do evil things and to be rebellious against God. And so in this parable, God uses agricultural illustration to try to show us something spiritual. And he says in that parable about the farmer who plants wheat into his field, and the farmer comes and tells the head farmer, saying, hey, somebody came in and sowed weeds, tares, into your wheat field, and now they're growing together. Do you want us to pull the weeds? Do you want us to pull the tares out of the wheat field? And the farmer says something very interesting. He says, no, because if you do, it's going to uproot the wheat. And so wait till the end, till the harvest time, and then we'll separate the two. So the spiritual side of that is the enemy. Satan came in, right? He deceived Adam and Eve. They rebelled against God. And now he influences some people to do rebellious acts against God and to do sometimes evil things. And above and beyond the things that we think of like murder and things like that, but even what we call pointless suffering, right? Where it just doesn't seem to be any good that comes from that, and people do those kind of wicked deeds. And so it's kind of like the angelic realm asks God, do you want us to wipe out the evil of this earth? And that surprising response of God comes back and saying, no. If I wipe out the evil, it's actually going to do more harm to the righteous than if I wait till the end times when I come back to judge the entire world. Then I'll separate the wicked from the righteous. So why is it that God says that? What does he mean by it would do more harm to the good if I was to remove the evil? Because that seems contrary to what we would think, right? Well, think of it this way. When would be the right time for God to remove evil? Is it the point after the person has done an evil deed? No, that doesn't work, right? Because then evil has just entered the world. So God can't wait until after the evil act has happened. So what about just moments prior to the physical act of evil happening? Does God stop it then? No, that doesn't really work either, right? Because really evil has still already entered. The person who is being assailed or whatever it might be, that the innocent, the victim, has just suffered the emotional side of things, right? The anxiety, the fear that would have came up in there. So we still have evil entering the world at that point. So the other option then, I guess, would be God stopping the individual before the evil act even was able to have motions transpiring towards it. Now, as we looked before, God has to allow the ability for evil in order to have moral good, as we looked at the first video. So it's really that God would have to strike the person dead, right? He has to give them existence and strike them dead the moment before they go through any kind of acts. That causes a problem. If God always did that, then we would never have a visual representation of humans doing anything evil. So we would have to trust God when he says everybody who's died would have been evil. And that would be kind of a hard thing too, because then we'd have to assume, does that mean everybody who has died would have been evil? Or does that just mean that they could have been righteous, they just died of natural things, but also the evil people are included in that? And we would never know, and you would have people standing before the throne being accused of something that they never actually did, right? God would say, I foreknew you were going to do this, but they'd be like, but I never did it. So that would be confusing on that front, but we're kind of looking at what this parable is saying, and saying it's harder for the righteous. So imagine that, your kid, your parent, your best friend, just all of a sudden ups and dies suddenly. That's going to be hard for you to understand, right? Because then you have a theology that says they were actually going to do something evil, and you're like, I'd never seen them do anything evil. They were just such a good person. That would really probably mess with our faith and trust in God, saying, I got to trust him that they were going to be evil, though I'd never seen anything wrong that they would do. So that'd be a problem. But take all that to the side for a second and take it one step further. Remember, God's definition of evil is sometimes different than what you and I think of. We think of the heinous things, the tortures, the murders, the things. But God lays a lot of things out in the Bible that we struggle with, right? We're not to slander individuals. That's evil, to destroy somebody's character. We're not to use the Lord's name in vain. We're not to argue and complain. We're not to just argue with somebody for the point of trying to win the argument and not really have anything to do with trying to learn the disagreement. There's lots of things that the Bible talks about. And put that all together with the fact that the Bible claims none is righteous, no, not one. Wait a minute. That means we're all evil, right? We all came from the outside of God's favor, and it's only through the work of Jesus Christ that we became in God's favor. So if we all started on the outside of that intimacy with God, oh no. That means if God was to remove evil, you and I wouldn't exist. God can't give us a pass because we were going to become a Christian and believe in the work that he was going to do for salvation because we did evil acts before we were a Christian. So evil would have entered the world, right? And those of us that are Christians, we recognize that as Christians, we still do, sadly, evil things. So even as Christians, we don't have this down right. We're only righteous because we're declared that by the work of Jesus Christ. So in the biggest sense, if God was to remove evil from this world, there would be nobody left. And that would have uprooted the righteous, right? More can be said on this, but for now, let's leave it at that.